A very good morning to all of you who are watching this video recording of my one-to-one with the Chief Constable. My name is Festus Akimbusoy, and I'm the Police and Crime Commissioner for Bedfordshire. And Trevor, if you would like to introduce yourself, please, before we start.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Trevor Rodenhurst, Chief Constable of Bedfordshire.
Now, what we do is we have these one-to-one that's recorded for the public to watch. And I think about once every month or thereabouts. And in between that, the chief and I, we have regular correspondence on issues as they arise. So we are in regular communication. But in terms of the one that we choose to make public, this is it. And hopefully you'll be able to take on board some of the questions that I'll be passing on to the Chief Constable. The questions mostly come from residents, from councillors, from something called the Performance Board meeting, which is chaired by my Chief Exec and other senior leadership from the force as well. And some questions that I've seen on social media from residents about policing and police performance. So it's a combination of questions from members of the public to the Chief on how Bedfordshire Police is planning to deal with some of the issues that they face. So, Trevor, if you could mind just giving us a progress report on your plans to fill the vacancies in community policing.
Well, I anticipated you might ask me about this, Commissioner, as you usually do. So we're not where I'd want us to be right now. So we do have, at last document I saw, about 15 vacancies of the 64 police constables that we have in that space, albeit I'm pleased to say we've only got one vacancy in total across all the supervisory ranks. And obviously we have PCSOs in there as well. However,
so the PCSOs is additional to the 64 PCs.
Indeed. So it's more than 100 that we have in community policing, and obviously it's not just those officers and PCSOs that the public see on the streets. You've got our patrol officers, detectives, other teams, roads policing, armed policing. So there's a whole combination of resources that are over and above that. However, as I previously said to you, Commissioner, outside of this sort of public forum, which I'm happy to commit to here, I want to close that gap. I want to close it significantly by sort of as we get into January. So by the end of January, I'd like us to be having probably, out of the 67, having about 60 of those posts full, with a view to 3 or 4 more being full by the end of the financial year. So that's what I'm working towards. And that is going to be, we are going to have to, do some sort of fine choices in terms of postings, but I know that's it's an important capability that we commit to maintaining high numbers in. It's a bit below where we want it to be, but that's a fairly short period of time in terms of the progress I foresee and commit to here.
And do you mind explaining why we have this fluctuating numbers in community? I know we have had higher numbers than what we've got at the moment in the past. And why do we have these fluctuations, and why do we have it at the moment?
Yeah, community has become a desirable place to go. Because of that, you have, real quality individuals going into that area, and then often those kind of individuals are successful in promotion processes, or indeed they've been in for a while and they seek to move into it to a different area of policing, having taken those skills with them. And so that is a factor. If you seek to get good people in that environment, they will nevertheless move around the organisation with their career. And there's other areas again that's really important for us to provide our bit to, such as our commitment to roads policing, for example, and there's some pressures there, and I will always release people into that environment. So it is a little bit of a balancing act, albeit community is important, reassurance for the public. It does important work on many of the things that are important to the public, and I'm we will post more people into that area who've been successful in their aspirations to go there, and we should see some good progress, Commissioner, by the time we get to the end of January.
I thought we had the budgeted for community was 77. Or am I misunderstanding that?
Yeah, so we committed to growing by an additional 10 by the
Yes.
end of the year, but obviously we've
Is
not
that
profiled
financial
it.
year or academic? Not academic. Financial year or calendar year?
Yeah, financial year.
Right.
And obviously that was to get to there by the end of the year, but currently that isn't profiled in because we never anticipated being there from a budgeted perspective until the end of the year. So
Okay.
those numbers will increase as we get right into the end stroke beginning of the new financial year. But at the moment I'm working to the current establishment in terms of 67, where I say want to close that gap. So that we're ready to then grow as we move into the following year.
Right. So I would just have to push back a little bit on that, because my understanding that the budgeted agreed budgeted amount was for 77 by the end of the financial year for March.
Yeah.
Are you saying that things might have changed, that might not be possible?
No. So we will, our plan was to increase that capability, but we haven't profiled to do it pretty much until right at the end of the year because of the growth of the organisation, the path we're on. However, we were both at the public meeting attended by partners and various members of the public in relation to knife crime recently. I committed there to growing existing community policing by increasing the number of officers, community officers who work with schools, and also increasing a superintendent into that area of business, an additional one. So
will those be part of that 10 then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're already starting to plan how that growth will happen.
Okay. And I think one thing I would just say briefly about this before we move on to the next question, which was raised with me by a member of the public who's also a magistrate around community policing, is that it is important, yes, that we get these numbers up, and I'm glad to see that we've got more numbers going in compared to what we had when I first came into office, is what they are being tasked to do as well. Obviously, the public want to see officers in patrol, and I'm seeing more and more of this happening. They're reporting this on social media, and that's really good just to inform the public they are out there. And I'm seeing some of the diary entries now from the officers of when they're going to be out and about in different towns and villages and city centers and so on and so forth. Can you just clarify again what you expect your community officers to be tasked with doing, and what they probably should spend less of their time doing?
Yeah. I'm really clear. This is an operational capability. It's not a, tea and biscuits kind of meeting thing. There are public meetings that are important where we listen to concerns of the public, but I expect them out there and tackling the priorities that exist in their local wards, in relation to our distributed model across the county. So some of that is some tough edge, it's closing down premises that have been used for drug dealing. In other cases, it's tackling, persistent antisocial behaviour that blights our communities. And indeed, I'm sure you might ask me about it later, but, we've seen rises in some, in crimes such as shoplifting and those things. And I, again, expect them to, know whether the top hotspots are for that activity and indeed the top, the offenders that we think are responsible. And therefore, there's engagement with retailers, etc., on plans in relation to them. And indeed, a really good example was Leighton Buzzard. Residents there will know there was some problems with town centre burglaries that occurred, and the community team, supported by other resources, recognised that, identified it, prioritised it, made arrests of 3 individuals, and that problem has since ceased.
All right. Well, I didn't know that there had been the arrests. I knew that 1 or 2 had been identified, but so has this been made public then? Well, now it is, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure it was, arrests have been made, and and in conversations with local communities, particularly those in the town centre who were, victims of this, there's certainly an awareness, locally that problem was tackled by the community team.
Okay.
It's some really good
Brilliant.
work.
Thanks. Now I'll move on to the second question, which was sent to me by a member of the public who's a magistrate. The concern was around the use of out-of-court disposals. They were concerned that they were seeing cases of someone, people with the knife, for example, or someone having committed a serious violent offense against another, being given an out of court disposal, and yet other offenses, which were on the fence but probably not as serious, were being put before a court. Can you just explain what kind of training and measures are in place to ensure that out of court disposals are being used appropriately by officers, please?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. There's the use of those, which I'm pleased to say is increasing where appropriate. There is the scrutiny that looks at is the use appropriate, and the process that's in place around that. And hopefully the lady that in question that you spoke about will find this update in reassuring. So firstly, there was one incorrect use where someone got an out of court disposal for a knife that was picked up by us. So when you made me aware of that, we were already aware of that and had tracked that back, because this is not appropriate in my view for that type of offending. Albeit that did happen on that one occasion. If I look at, just while you were talking, brought up the latest data I have access to. So September to October, there were 163 out of court disposals, and in the same period, 35 conditional cautions as well. So firstly, in relation to scrutiny, the frontline supervisors should be scrutinising all of this.
Trevor, sorry to interrupt. Can you give me do you have any information as an idea of what some of those 163 consisted of?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the 163 in front of me, but I know it will be for things such as, maybe criminal damage, that kind of offending, where the impact on the victim, the cost of the crime, those sorts of things, where it's, I'm not saying it's not important to the victim, but it's at the less serious end of the crime spectrum.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, just to be clear, I mean, I am a supporter of out of court disposals. There is a place for it. But I just want to be sure that it is being used appropriately, and we don't have a case where anyone caught with a knife is going to get an out of court disposal in Bedfordshire.
No, and that, as I say, that was identified by one of our inspectors that was reviewing those in any case. So that kind of so there is these need to be signed off by a supervisor, firstly and foremostly, a sergeant or inspector, depending on what it is. That's the first point of scrutiny, and then probably the most important one. Thereafter, we've got a dedicated member of staff, or you have, Commissioner, in your your office, that's looking at all of these.
Yes.
And again, is able to raise issues of any concerns on appropriateness and whether it's been done correctly. And we have a DI, which was the DI that picked up that knife crime one. That, any issues can be raised to. And then that individual makes sure that the individuals, that our outsourced provider, because you don't just get an out of court disposal, you have to attend a program, and that the individual in your office makes sure that that's all teed up and that they have to embark on that. And then there is, in addition to all of that, there's a quarterly scrutiny panel chaired by a retired judge who dip samples these. So, for example, on the last time that was done, they looked at 15 separate cases, and they found one where they felt it was inappropriate, and obviously that gets fed back, and then the learning via that DI gets cascaded. So we've got a process in place that is improving our use of them, but we both know that this can be really effective to to turn people around early, and also it helps us make sure that those things go into the court where we know there are pressures, are the right things going through that, and it speeds up the outcome for victims, etc.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's good. I'm glad to have that reassurance that we're not going to become an area where anyone, caught with a knife, will be getting out of court is spoken. Good.
Can I say one last thing on that?
Yeah, sure, sure.
The avoidance of doubt. Anyone who carries a knife in this county can expect the police to come looking for them and to find that, and that for that to be a criminal justice outcome. So if anyone's got any worries that's causing them to do that, then contact us and we'll seek to help. But do not carry a knife, because if you do, likelihood is we will find you. You'll enter the criminal justice system. So I want to be really clear on that.
Very good. Can you give us an update on the performance from the force control room? Obviously, this is an area of concern for you and I. I'm really pleased when we spoke a couple of days ago of some. It's not every often that the chief constable is absolutely glowing with some kind of joy, having seen some of this remarkable turnaround in the FCR since you made some of the investments in there with personnel a couple of months ago. So can we just have a brief update on performance in the FCR, please?
Yeah, I am really pleased. I said we would turn this around, and we have, and I can see that this turning the corner now. So it's a great. I'm really pleased you've asked me about this. So I'll give you some facts and figures, and then I'll also come on to a bit of a sort of context in terms of what's behind this. So in the last 7 days, and I've got the most recent data as of this morning open in front of me, there was only one day where we failed to answer our 999 calls within 90% of them within 10 seconds. And even on that day, the average answering time was 14 seconds. So you can see it's not miles off. But on all the other days of that week, it varied between 6 seconds and 9 seconds. And if I give us a kind of year to date, we're just over 70% of the calls being answered, but month to date, with 90% of the calls being answered within 10 seconds, which is the target that we aim to be at. So
yes,
the 999 performance has improved, and it's a stable improvement. And so, that is, really pleasing. So this month, we've answered all 999 calls within an average of 9 seconds.
And how does that compare to? I mean, have you ever had a time since you've been here anyway where you've had that kind of performance outcome? That you can recall?
So this is probably the best I've seen it, and yet demand is not significantly tailed off, albeit I think how we're responding to the public, the way we are managing that has improved.
Mm-hmm.
And indeed, this isn't at the expense of 101s. They are improving as well and continue to. So I think the main thing is, we did make the decision to put 16 officers in the control room on a kind of rotational basis. Interestingly, of the ones we put in there, a couple have asked to be posted in there permanently. So that means that there's only 15 rotating, and 2 others have said could they extend their current time. So that means I've had to then bring less new people in on rotation in there, which again is good. This month we received 12 refer a friend kind of applications, which is something we do with our contact staff in the room. Mm-hmm. So the fact that they're referring friends and family, that's probably suggesting that they feel it's a place they can recommend people to come and work. So
is there a 4 on 4 off for the officers in there as well?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So just like response.
They work with the same team they would work with.
Right.
The same shift pattern if they were on the street, which again is good for how they work together and team morale, and knowing the strengths and weaknesses of team. Their team. And then the other thing is, sickness has gone right down in that room. So I've only got 2 members of staff within that room who what we would classify as long-term sick, which is, again, I always see that as a real positive indicator of, an environment where it's, a good place to work. And indeed, the room's configured into 3 distinct areas. So you have individuals taking calls from the public, individuals who then are talking to our units on the ground over the radio, sort of controlling the response to those incidents, and also those taking crimes. Now, at one point, we were quite low in terms of numbers of people taking crimes, and now we're nearly up to strength. And because of that,
Right.
when people are reporting crimes and they select that option, they're answered by that team, which takes it out of the 101 system.
Right. Okay.
So all round, there's factors which are improving, and again are innovation. So they've taken about 10% of the 101 demand out of the room. And again, our multi-chat feature on our kind of chatbot is now live. It allows one person to kind of be overseeing 5 conversations at one time. Another innovation that we're bringing into the rooms, making good progress as well. So all in all, the experience, and I think, I don't know where we are when we kind of look, nationally. I never like to kind of necessarily call those out, but I know we've progressed from an end of the kind of comparison that I wouldn't want to be at to the end that I would want to be at.
I know that we were close to the bottom performance-wise some time ago for different reasons, and it's just good this kind of improvement. One thing I want to just ask you in terms of the FCR and demand before going to the next question. I understand from Salesforce that about 70% or thereabouts of calls to 101 are people calling for an update. I mean, that is staggering. So obviously, we're working on this technology platform to allow people to be able to self monitor and manage their crime, as it were, through a portal, so they can have all the information that they need without having to call the 101 team. Even if you can reduce that by 50%, that would be a significant reduction. And I know it's been done in TVP and one of the police force area. Can you just give an update on how the work is going in terms of bringing this in to Bedfordshire?
Yeah, again, it looks like a really positive product, one I'm, committed to embarking on that journey, and we're already, doing all the steps that we need to take to, enable us to take advantage of that system here. So, all of the kind of discovery work streams and process mapping, that's all done. Data's captured. Workshops have been jointly done, and I think they have all the data and workshops that they now need completed. So now we're at the stage of options for how we might, implement that, and costs and those sorts of things. And again, we'll work through that, Commissioner. So, I don't think this is going to be live in this performance year, but it's one I'd like to see go live early in the new performance year.
Okay. Right. Update on HMIC FRS.
So we're at that period now where the HMIC FRS have access to our data. Indeed, I think they're doing some field work with us in January, and again, we'll be live, throughout the whole period up until about September next year, where their full kind of inspection sort of takes place. However, in terms of an update in, making sure we are focused on the areas that we need to be better at, when you reflect on where we were the last inspection, and also making sure that that's not at the expense of some of the areas we were really good at. So in terms of, the 2 key areas, one largely was responding to the public in terms of control room. Now, I think we've just kind of covered, a real positive, focus on how access to Bedfordshire Police via our various methods in our control room is in much better shape than it was, and continues to improve. The other area was, an area that we required improvement was around supervision of investigations. And, in terms of that, the things I would highlight are, so, we've embarked on the accelerated detective program and have taken numerous cohorts. So we're starting to improve our investigative skill base. Since the last inspection, we now have 2 detective sergeants on each CID team, whereas we had 1 before. Our file quality team is more mature, and it, is working well. And obviously the other thing that we've done since that time is move a workload onto our frontline officers, and we continue to focus on the supervision of those crimes. And I know the leadership of our patrol function are very much focused on improving that. So I think all of the things that we should be doing in order to respond, positively to the last report and put us in a good place for further scrutiny. And ultimately, this is all about improving the service to the public.
Mm-hmm.
That's the main thing. And I don't see any of the HMIC recommendations that we're working towards as being able to kilter with that. So,
Right. Okay.
this is about improving the service to the public first and foremost. The HMIC said there's some things we need to do that, and as far as I'm concerned, we're on track. I must say we are, we still have a lot of students. We're still growing the experience within the organisation, and that is a journey that we're on. It's not one you can wave a wand at. It needs to be, and it does take time. But I think
it's a good journey to be on. I mean, I'm sure as a chief, you would, in a perfect world, you'd want to have every single one of your police officers with 20 years of experience, but that is not realistic. But I think it's a good place to be, that you have this pipeline of young, energetic, passionate police officers, young in service, not just young in age, to just bolster the numbers that you have. And I've met quite a few of them, and they are truly impressive, given some of their backgrounds.
And on that point, back in July, we had about 414 students. Now we've got in the region of 364, but I've got the same number of officers. Therefore, that must mean there are 50 individuals who are now no longer students and are out there in their final postings, which is an improvement. And I sit here with confidence saying, in a similar period of time, it should have reduced again in terms of the proportion of officers that are students.
And the key is that we're retaining more of them now.
Yeah.
That is really good, and hopefully the HMI, for those who don't know what HMI CFRS stands for, it stands for His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary Fire and Rescue Service. So we just call them HMI. So it's a bit of a mouthful. Okay, thanks for that update, Trevor. Now, about Leighton Buzzard, I met some residents at Youthscape in Luton last week, when the Veru were doing the screening of a video around the anti-knife crime campaign, the Just Drop It, which was absolutely brilliant, by the way, last week. They did a great job with Bedfordshire Police. And she was just mindful that there isn't much update to local residents as to what police officers are doing in the area. She did, suggest that there were no police in Leighton Buzzard. Now, I know otherwise because I am aware of some of the police operations in there. I've been myself on a raid in the morning before to one of the traveler sites, which was very, very productive in terms of things that were recovered, with dogs and other suspected stolen items. So I am aware of this. Is there anything you can do to encourage community teams or whichever teams to make local areas more aware of outcomes that officers are achieving in their area? Because as far as people are concerned, if they don't see it happening, it probably didn't happen.
Okay, so in terms of Leighton Buzzard, what would say to that lady and other residents is, I've already mentioned, so I won't repeat. The burglary operation led by the community team. Those officers saw that problem. They changed their shifts and what times they were working to make sure that they worked with other resources. With an operation. I know that was communicated to the public. I'm just looking now in November. So far, there have been 15 engagements with the community teams and the public in various forums, and there are more planned. We've recently set up the Shop Watch group over there to give shopkeepers more support, and that's gone well. And I'm currently, supporting that area, those teams of overtime to do more effort around those things in the town centre. There was a big, there was a successful partnership operation with Trading Standards recently with kind of tackling illegal vapes being sold, with hundreds of illegal vapes being seized. That was advertised on our Facebook page. There's current activity ongoing about an emerging gang threat that's been identified there, and all of our engagements are listed on police.uk, and we regularly put them out on social media pages. So I would encourage that lady to be our friend on Facebook, on Instagram, to look on police.co.uk, and go and participate in some of those events that are taking place at the local area. Because I think the team has actually stepped up its visibility. So hopefully that will be helpful for.
I mean, I will confess that in terms of the level of information and activity on social media across the board from all the teams, it's a lot better than it used to be 2 years ago. Obviously, I do feel strongly about this because I think it's important for the public to know what their local officers are doing, and especially in terms of reporting back to them on priorities as well. So I will concur in that regard. But whatever can be done more to just keep people abreast of things, I think it will be really helpful. Next question is from Ashley. Yeah, so can you just explain the level of support that is being provided, that is provided by Bedfordshire Police to officers who are under investigation by Professional Standards Department, or PSD? Do these officers have access to occupational health while they're under investigation? And or is this just left to the Police Federation to deal with?
It's a combination of things. So first and foremost, there's absolute recognition that when someone falls under the investigation of professional standards, by its very nature, that's going to feel stressful to the individual, particularly individuals who might fall under the what we call gross misconduct, which is obviously one of the sanctions of that can be a dismissal. So it's a serious thing, and there is instances of individuals kind of well-being and suffering from stress from being under those investigations. So I think for me personally, the best thing in terms of alleviating any unnecessary pressure in that is that the investigations are done thoroughly but at pace, to limit the amount of time that those things last for, because there have been instances where they've taken too long, and we put more resources in there to work on that. But the clinicians' response to individuals who are suffering often will be stress, who are under those investigations. Is the clinical answer to that is this is because of the investigation, and them being not under investigation will alleviate, largely the cause of this. They will always assist with, the OH team will support welfare plans, back to work plans, those kinds of things. But they know that the clinical answer is likely to be that, and that actually the best thing that can be done is really effective welfare support. And it's not just the Federation, albeit I will call them out as doing a brilliant job in the way they support their members, that actually there should be an appointed welfare officer from the force, and the role of that person is vitally important. Obviously, there are other support they can access, including from their own GP. We've got an employee assistant program, a welfare support line, which is via the Federation. We've mentioned the Federation. And there is obviously Police Care UK, etc., and in-house wellbeing. Our in-house wellbeing offer is better than it's ever been.
How certain are you that the designated welfare officers for those officers and staff members who are going through PSD are actually effective? I mean, of course, I don't expect you to know that level of detail, but it's something that I'm just putting out there, only because I have had one or two officers just mentioned to me that they kind of feel cast adrift while they're being investigated. I mean, of course, people plead their innocence, and that, I mean, I can't be a part of that. That's not within my remit. But mine is more about the efficiency of what the force is trying to do, which includes the welfare of police officers, even if they are under investigation. So I'm just really mindful, Chief, that there might be something that you might want to look into and maybe do some deep sampling to see how well this welfare aspect is taking place.
Well, yeah, what I was going to say is I think there is something, firstly, before I answer that, that the OH, that could be additional offer, but that's something we are looking at in any case. But I agree with you. This is, this can be very much impacted by the contact you get, the
Yeah.
quality of that, and the trust and support and how that feels. You know, that's a leadership responsibility to make sure that those things are in place, and it is something we check and continue to check. And the federation, they've raised this exact point with me, and as a result of
Right.
the engagement I've already had with them, we are pushing that side of things as well.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. This is probably something we can touch base on again when you've got some more updates on what is being done to try and improve that. I mean, I genuinely recognize, that um, we have to have standards in policing. Complaints have to be taken seriously, and they have to be looked at. So I would in no way want to demean, denigrate, or divert attention from the important work that the PSDs have to do. They're there for a reason, and they have had some very successful outcomes, as we both know, recently, and there's still ongoing cases, that some of which are in the public domain. I'm just mindful as well that uh, the process can take a long time to come to fruition or conclusion. And of course, you've put more resources into PSD, but the time is still an issue, and that has an impact on the officers and staff members who are being investigated. So whatever can be done to just ensure that the supervisory part and the welfare side of that for the officers is working, I think would be very much welcome.
Yeah, I think the absolute key to it is, but high quality investigations done at pace by professional standards, and also leaders taking responsibility to address any behavioural issues that could lead to something in the future going into professional standards, so that we prevent
Yes.
the number of things escalating into there. So that for me is key to this, and therefore it's swifter and it takes less of a toll on individuals who feel that there's a kind of a sort of Damocles hanging above them while these things are ongoing. But the welfare bit's key, and as I say, I'm having another look at what offer could be made available to those who really suffering as a result of being in some of those situations.
And of course, we've doubled the from my office anyway, the amount of funding made available for external counseling. I think that's the Counseling Foundation that deals with that, for police officers who want to seek external support from the force. So we increased that from 20,000 to 40,000, I think, last year, and we're doing the same thing again for next year. So okay, next question is on retail crime. What priority is the force giving to retail crime, and what do we know about its causes as part of prevention focus? This was a question raised to me by a local shopkeeper who is constantly a victim of shoplifting. I pick this up when I go into local shops and I talk and I introduce myself. Last week at the APCC conference and NPCC conference that we we're both at, again, retail crime was raised. Um, this is a problem. I have, with your predecessor, raised the prospect of, you know, you have the successful Up Maze team, who have led, and I think it's okay for me to actually share this in public. I've been looked at the digital crime and performance pack, which I've got in front of me at the moment, that showed Bedfordshire Police has seen the biggest fall in residential burglaries in the whole country at minus 50, well, at minus 59%. So we've seen the biggest fall, and the second best performing force in Suffolk is at 49%. So, but that is for residential burglaries. So that is a fantastic achievement, and overall neighborhood crime down by about 32%. Again, we're in the top 5 in the country for that. But if you look at retail crime in isolation, we probably won't be anywhere there. So is there any scope of expanding the offering from the Maze team who deal with the domestic burglaries to also including retail crime, or do we need to look at that into the budget cycle for next year for extra investment to that team? Because if they can have the result in domestic burglaries, surely the same can happen for retail crime as well.
Yeah, so in terms of what the objective that you seek to kind of achieve there for the public, I'm with you on that. In terms of the method, I probably have a slightly different answer. Thanks for calling out the success of the Maze team and the burglary. Burglary is hugely impactful on victims, and I think because of the impact on victims and some of the numbers we were seeing historically, we have formed a dedicated team, and the results are as you described, which I won't repeat. They do an amazing job, along with our approach to offender management, which obviously focuses on those engaged in serious acquisitive crime. And in fact, we have our prolific offender program that we run successfully, in partnership with the court. So those two things combined have had a big effect. I think in relation to shoplifting, yes, I think nationally, we recognise that the instances have increased, the seriousness in some cases with use of violence and those things have increased. I already have, as far as I'm concerned, a specialist team to tackle that problem. And we already spoke about it, which is our community team. And that's why I want to get the numbers up, because, I think in terms of shoplifting, it's less complex than burglary, but does need a collaborative approach with the shops. And if, in fact, our community teams know what are their hotspots in terms of the shops that, where the highest instances are and severity, who are our, those in our most kind of, intelligence tells us are our most prolific offenders. So if we're on the hot places, hot people, and then we work really collaboratively with the retailers to make sure, CCTV is as good a quality as it can be. The positioning of stock within the shop is in really good positions, and where appropriate, there are other measures in place. That will make a big impact on it. I know nationally, Operation Opal now is looking at, organised crime and how that impacts on shoplifting. And again, we work collaboratively with that effort. And therefore, I think we're getting those resources and prioritising the hot places, hot people, and the prevention efforts, will make, again, with an approach to real close working with the retailers and then strategies to prevent reoffending, that will make a big difference. And I see the community team at the heart of that, supported by our offender management team.
So, I mean, of course, at the moment, a shopkeeper would say, someone comes to my shop, they nick a couple of, biscuits and donuts, and, I don't even want to say biscuits and donuts, but for biscuits and donuts and a bottle of, champagne or something like that, all coming to less than, I don't know, 100 quid. The police won't turn up. Is there a minimum amount for which the police will not come up to? And usually, what are the factors that determine whether the police come out to report it shoplifting or not, usually?
So in terms of attendance, we would always prioritise it where violence has been used, where an offender's been detained, for example, by security.
Sorry to interrupt. So if someone has been detained by, say, security or by shop staff, the police will turn up, because there was a case that was reported last week. You might have heard about it, where a shoplifter was detained, and the police said they couldn't come because they were busy. Not here, by the way. And then the person was, they had to leave them. So in Bedfordshire, if the person was detained by security and it was safe, of course they did it safely. The police will turn up.
Yeah. So where an offender's detained, we will attend with urgency, and in particular, if it's a repeat offender, prolific offender, a juvenile, or there's some elevated priority. So we will always seek to attend, but I caveat that with we thrive every instant we get, which is a threat, harm, risk, investigation, and vulnerability kind of engagement process we do in the control room. So that caveat is, that's what I expect us to be doing. But on a certain day, at a certain moment, if there's something happening in this county that meant that's really difficult to do that, then we would look at all of those factors as we're deciding how we redeploy someone to that incident. But in the main, those are the circumstances. And the other time, Festus, where we will seek to go is where evidence needs to be promptly secured and can only be done in person by us attending, such as forensic evidence. Obviously, with digital forensic evidence now, it's much easier to transfer that directly to us. So hopefully, that gives some reassurance of what the position is here. And in fact, we're discussing this today at my force executive boards, where I'll be kind of re-emphasizing, my desire that our approach is in the way I've described with you today.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that this is totally getting out of control in some cases, where people feel they can go into a shop and help themselves and walk out, knowing there will be no consequences. And in my view, and of course you're the professional here, in terms of police operations, I would imagine that a lot of the people who are these persistent shoplifters are also committing other crimes, and dealing with one or two of those will probably help to deal with other crimes as well for another the food chain. So I think that reassurance will be really, really beneficial to our businesses in Bedfordshire, that we would take a zero tolerance approach to this. Two add-ons to that, Chief, is the use of face recognition technology in helping to identify some of the most persistent offenders, who I'm sure many of you, I mean, your team's already working with the offender management team, who are doing a brilliant job. Is that something that you can see? I mean, I'm in favor of that, by the way. And I think obviously you're a huge fan of technology as well. So is that something that we can have here in Bedfordshire, having seen it piloted elsewhere as well?
Yes, so there's two parts of the facial recognition technology. The reactive part is where we get a good image, and then we compare that against the police national database and images we have on our own systems. We have that now, so that's something we should and do will use. The facial recognition that's deployed specifically for certain operations in certain localities, that's more kind of, looking at, doing that in a proactive way in certain localities, supporting certain operations. That's a different technology, and that's one where I think there's a recognition that policing in general, there is a space for this capability to be deployed in a way that's to help tackle a variety of policing challenges. And that technology is now sufficiently advanced that I think there is an offer out there that we should be enhancing our capability with here. So that's something I'd like to think that we will probably move towards. What's the right offers for Bedfordshire Police in the coming financial year?
Right.
Obviously, all subject to affordability, funding, and all those things. But I think the technology's there now to support law enforcement activity. We should do it. All I would say again to our public who might have worries about that is anything we do here in Bedfordshire that's new in terms of that innovation will be really closely scrutinised to make sure it doesn't profile one particular part of the community above another, or not higher instances of false positives or any kind of disproportionate use of that.
I mean, these have come a long way, and I'm very much pro the use of this technology. I've looked into this quite closely, the way it was used in Wales when they had the concert with Beyonce there. I mean, I think a wanted pedophile was found through the use of the face recognition technology. Same thing I think in Essex as well, where they've piloted this. Obviously in London as well during some of the protests. I think there are some real upsides to this, but of course we'll probably have a scrutiny panel of some kind to kind of just monitor the data as we do so well in Bedfordshire. So I welcome that. The other thing the other issue I wanted to just raise with you about the shoplifting and acquisitive crime bit, Chief, is the courts part. So your officers catch a shoplifter with whatever it is that they have on them. They're charged. They go to court. Do Bedfordshire Police have any influence on the sentencing that that individual gets?
You know, this is not a special instance for Bedfordshire Police around shoplifting. You know, we present the facts to the court, and the court determine the outcome. Obviously, we talked earlier about other disposal methods and programs and those kinds of things, and obviously for prolific offenders engaged in serious acquisitive crime, we also have our offender management strategies that can be deployed as well. But in terms of the court, it's ultimately a decision for the court in terms of the outcomes. Obviously, one commissioner that you might have as a theme at the criminal justice board that you chair in the future, where that can be discussed.
Yeah, it just amazes me that we have some individuals who have been arrested probably about 50 times for shoplifting, and they go into court and they're back out with the community do some community hours, whatever it is, or 200 quid fine. And I'm just not sure that is the best way. But at the same time, I understand the prisons are full, but I just think that there's got to be something more that can be done, especially given the persistent nature of some of this offending. But yes, I will. Great way to bat that away, Chief, to the criminal justice.
Well, I mean, on
No,
that,
it's right.
What we need, isn't it, is really effective programs on diversionary activity that then, if someone is going to be, for the nth time, not get a custodial sentence for these types of crimes, it needs to be, in circumstances that means they have to participate in a program that might address a drug habit or other driver for this crime.
So I just shared some information today with the announcement of the government giving some next tranche of funding as part of the 10-year drug strategy, which you helped to create. I don't think many people know that. And the local authorities got their announcement of funding this week, I think, to deal with drugs and alcohol abuse, which I'm sure we both agree contribute a big role to a lot of the shoplifting and acquisitive crime that we see in Bedfordshire and in the country as well.
Yeah, and that offer needs to be really proactive, really effective, really compelling, and slightly diversifying into the conversation. But again, when we take out drug dealers, we often are able then to, particularly when we take out a drug line, we're able to then target, with messaging, individuals who have been, if you like, the users, the customers. And my personal belief is, the reach out to those individuals, the offer that's immediately there as the line that they were using is taken down. That's a key moment for that kind of intervention to take place.
So you're sending text messages to the drug buyers?
Yes.
I'm sure you must get some, thank you messages in return, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't do it personally on my own phone. But,
no, I'm sure it's not you.
It.
I'm sure it's not you. Well, not that's real clever. That the last question I've got here, Chief, is for you to provide an update on reported cases of domestic abuse in Bedfordshire and the primary drivers of this crime. from your data? And lastly, how many of the cases investigated of domestic abuse by Bedfordshire Police involved a child in the home?
Okay, so domestic abuse is a serious problem nationally and here, and hence we put a lot of resources into domestic abuse, and not just those that investigate the crimes, but those that seek to look at really focusing on those that might be repeat offenders, in servicing Clare's Law and those sorts of things. But I'm pleased to say, we've seen a reduction in repeat offenders this year. Not as big as I'd like, but it is a repeat. But in terms of the volumes and your specific question about, young people being exposed to this. So far this year, I'm just waiting for the spinning wheel of Power BI to come to life. We've had 4,918 crimes of the various categories that fall into domestic abuse.
So far, you mean performance year or calendar year?
Performance year.
Okay.
And
well, hang on a second. So that's since April this year.
Yeah. So no, sorry, I've given you a duff figure there. So
Okay.
for anyone who's going to, FOI that, the current period, year to date, sorry, is 4,612.
Okay.
And it was 4,918 last year, so slightly down,
Okay.
by 300 and something crimes in the same period, but nevertheless a big number of crimes.
Wow.
In terms of how many of them had children present, there were 3,431 occasions, so a very high proportion.
3,481.
No, 431.
31.
So of the 4,612, 3,431
Wow.
had children present, obviously, which is troubling in itself because of what they've been exposed to. And as you would expect, we have that figure because we have to, share that in a partnership environment in order to look at the welfare of those children.
So just to reiterate, year to date, of the 4,612 cases of domestic abuse that Bedfordshire Police has dealt with, 3,431 had a child in the home.
Yes.
Or around it.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, and so normally, what kind of process then does the force go through when a child is involved like this?
So there are a number of things that happen. Obviously, each case is treated on its merits, and we always seek to put in support, as you know, to the victim of these crimes, and that we have victim engagement officers, specialists to support these families. But in terms of the issue of the children, obviously, as part of the risk assessment that we complete of each, it's what's the circumstances and is what's been witnessed and those sorts of things. And obviously we then do referral via multi-agency safeguarding hubs, so that we make our colleagues in social services and schools aware of that. And in certain instances, Commissioner, depending on we may do much more than that, but it depends on the unique circumstances of each case.
Yeah, that's just very upsetting, actually. That's quite a high figure, very high figure. And this will be kids who are going to be going to school in Bedfordshire or somewhere. These will be kids who we're going to be expecting to make good, healthy choices in our communities. And this is going to be part of the adverse childhood experiences that they're going to be growing up with. Yeah, so I'll be very keen to kind of to see what more I can do from my office as we go through the commissioning for next year, how we are supporting those kids, especially. But of course, we've got the perpetrator work that's going to be starting with hearts to prevent repeat offending. So that'll be really good to see what the outcome of that is at the end of the financial year. But those are all the questions that I've got for you, Chief, and just want to thank you for your work and the leadership that you've shown in the force. I'm sure it's not easy, but I do say you have a great team around you, which helps. So thank you very much, and we will, of course, meet again.
Yeah, no problem at all. My pleasure, and nice to see you got your Luton Town jersey on the wall
That
behind you
that's
as
that's the
well.
sign one that I won at an auction. So I've kept that up there. As you can see, the older one, but anyway, there you go. All right, great to see you, Trev.
Okay,
Bye
cheers, mate.
bye.
Bye bye.